I got all my move like this.
I never know if this works.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Sometimes this music works and sometimes it doesn't. If anyone is out there is watching, if you can hear the rock music, let me know. Because sometimes I see the replay and I don't see it. So. All right, everybody. Nice to see everybody. There's Chat with Chad after a couple weeks off. As you can see, the bright, smiley face, it looks like in his man cave is Bob Ferrari. Hey, Bob.
Hey, yeah, I can't cover up all my mess like I can on Zoom and stuff, but my office is in a closet that stores all my mountaineering equipment and everything. So there it is.
That's what we call a man cave, right?
Good enough.
And so yeah, so I mean, it was super exciting to see you at the NCSG, and wow, that booth, it got some play, did it not?
Oh yeah, hopefully the spinoff got over to you across the aisle.
It did a little bit, not as much as I'd like, because I think everybody was walking out with stars in their eyes. And so everybody, if you don't know, I'm just going to kind of tee this up a little bit. If you're at convention, I know you know. If you're not at convention, that's kind of why we have the show and stuff, is it kind of let everybody be informed a little bit. But Bob through the NCSG, he's the education director, right?
Yeah.
Bob, yep. So he's been for probably 6 to 8 months now working on a VR program, which is super cool. And they had a booth at a convention, and it was by far the busiest booth at convention this year. And I had the luxury of sitting right next to it, watching everybody and the entertainment. Not 1 second was I bored. And I did have some crossover over to the Chimney Closer app, which we can talk about here in a little while, that kind of goes along with this a little bit. But yeah, Bob, tell us a little bit. First, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't know who you are, but go ahead and tee up who you are, where you've been in the industry, and let's move on from there.
All right. Well, I live in California. I started a chimney business in 1984 and sold it a couple years ago and was sort of retired. And then the guild came to me and asked if I was interested in being a director of education, and they interviewed me among others. And I kind of needed to recenter. So I said yes. That was almost a year ago. And but the things I was not interested in is doing what's already being done, because it's already being done, and that's boring to just do the same thing. And it's being done well. So I didn't want to just travel around and teach classes or something like that.
Right.
And I that was pretty much my main thing. And I don't like being micromanaged. So that wouldn't work. And they're really good. The board has been great at going, well, go for it. Let's see where you go. And I had told them at the beginning that I felt like the future for education, not just trades, but for all education, is going to be in the VR realm. And that's where I wanted to go. So they gave me the freedom to go for it. And you said, I don't know, 8 or 9 months. It's actually been 5 since we signed a contract. So pretty short time that we jumped in and started actually making progress toward creating this.
Yeah, surely this was in your head before 5 months ago, though.
Well, it was in my head, I don't know, 10 years ago when I spoke at a Heat Shield Summit on creativity and insights and distractions. Was another, I think it might have been in the one on distractions. And I said we were going to bash the Zers and the millennials and them because they just want to sit around, play video games, and get a good grade without having to work for it, and all the stereotypes.
Yeah.
But before I do, I wanted to say that there's not a single popular video game where you don't start at the bottom and fail forward until you achieve whatever the goal is in that game. And that's the language of success. And I felt like then, and I do now, that much of the problem with hiring and complaining about those generations of people coming into the workforce might not be their fault. It might be that we don't speak their language. And when I watch my grandchildren, my oldest grandchild's 29, so they're back down to 13. They're right in that Zers realm that grew up. My youngest granddaughter would swipe her toys when she couldn't even talk yet,
Right.
1 year old, and they've grown up with this. And so, although we tend to talk about VR as though it's new, but it's not. It's only new to us old people, and B, down into the trades where it's finally become more or less affordable with the growth of AI and the other things that can drive it. The military's been in it for decades. Pilots have used it for 3 decades. Surgeons have been using it for 10 or 15 years. And now it's come to us. If I figure if you can learn heart surgery, you ought to be able to open a chimney.
Inspect the chimney. Yeah. It's funny, and I don't know who wrote this. He's a visionary. It's probably David Stewart, but that's a guess, and I don't know if it is or not. But either way, I mean, you are a visionary, and when it comes to when it comes to the future of this business, I've got Coach's Corner this month in the Sweeping magazine, and I'm right. Oh, it's Steve Scally, and so there we go. And so, hi, Steve. And so I've got the Coach's Corner article this month, and I wrote it all about, there's a paragraph about this and a little bit about, my chimney closer, but about all the technology that this industry is finally starting to embrace. And like what I even say in the article a little bit without giving anything away. I mean, people now can't even imagine when they get into the business that you had to write on a piece of paper to do an inspection not that long ago, right? I mean, really, I actually still have met people that are still, calling Copperfield or Lindemans up and ordering the 3-ply paper. But that's getting to be, I'm sure they're dwindling down their stock more and more because inspection software is out there and it's getting better and better and better and better, making our lives easier. And as soon as AI starts getting into some of these programs a little bit more than just the code writing and stuff like that, I'm going to stop right there because I'll let everybody read the article next month. But I get a little crazy. I mean, people are going to think like, there's no way we're going to be there. But I mean, when you put that VR headset on, I don't think you'd envisioned 5 months ago that you'd be looking at a chimney like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm over 70 years old. I never played a video game in my life. My experience of video games was my kids played Super Mario Brothers, and my son would come in and go, "Hey, Dad, come on, play this with me," and I'd have to listen to that stupid music, and we'd play, and I'd get killed in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he'd start playing, and I'd go outside and I'd rototill the garden and plant everything and set up stuff. And then he'd say, "Hey, it's your turn." And I'd come in and get killed in 2 seconds. And it really wasn't all that fun. And I didn't want to spend the time practicing like the kids did. But that's just some of us. There's more of generations that do things in that virtual world. And even as a mountain guide, we had a conference once in Montana, and it's been a long time, maybe 15 years. And there was a younger guy there in his 30s, and he was a gamer. And they were playing those kinds of games that it's a team game, and they're all over the world. They built a team and they do something. And he gave a lecture there, and he said the exact same hormones are released, the grief responses come up, the physiological reactions happen when you fail and your team dies in this simulation as happens in real life. And we're like, whatever, we're into real things like freezing to death and drowning in a river and all of that. So that's like real.
Yeah.
But it turns out that that was true. And like as we've been developing this ladder safety class, we had to change it because somebody'd be 30 feet up a ladder and fall, and they'd fall on the floor and hurt themselves, or the trauma of just going out of a nightmare like, whoa!
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they've got PTSD about a ladder, and we're trying to make them safe on it. Now they're scared to death to climb it because it was so real. You're so immersed in that environment. So those are very actual physical responses. In fact, at the booth there at convention, we could tell when somebody was teleported to the roof, because in the demo, there's a point where that happens.
Yeah.
And they would rock and go, whoa, because you're standing on the edge of the roof and it's a steep roof and you're two stories up, and your senses say that's where I am.
So give it. So I mean, so everyone understands it is a VR headset, and I'm gonna go a little beyond that here in a little bit. But what is it? I mean, because people who are not there don't know. So what are you going to accomplish? What's the goal right now on stage one as it's rolled out? What are you going to be able to do with it?
Well, the reason I brought it wasn't to do something cool. It was to solve some problems with training. And the problem's not with information, and that the problem's with the cost of having to travel, the cost of being away from earning money, especially if you're a small company. And if nobody's there working, you're not making money and you're paying for travel. Right. And then retention, which is the way our brains work. We gather information according to what seems important to our brain, and what's important to a novice, say in a classroom, is going to be different from the nuances that an experienced person picks up. And I've had guys come back from really good trainings and not get what I wanted them to get or thought they were going to get. And I didn't understand it. That's really how it works. And I likened it to when we watch a movie and we watch it the first time and then we watch it a second time, and all these things we didn't see show up. And it's the same thing when we take any kind of a class. The first time you get the basics, the actors, the drama, the flow of the story, and whatever it is. But the second time you already got all that, and so you start picking up these new things. And that's why somebody can go to a class a year later or 2 years later and go, man, I got so much more out of it this time. So in VR, we can do that. We can play it over and over and over until they get it and are tested on it, and actually create mind and muscle memory that goes through a certain cycle that we're directing them down, and the learning takes place. So those are the problems we wanted to solve: the retention and the travel and the being away from work. VR addresses that. The second part of it is it's a bridge between a classroom and hands-on. There's so much, and every day it's getting to be more. Last summer, a pair of hands, virtual hands, that could tie knots were $100,000, and the military has them. Well, that's a little bit out of the budget for one pair of hands. But this winter, they were $50,000, and now they're like $30,000. And just like everything else, the cost is coming down, and it's starting to get into our hands. Well, when we can tie knots, there's a whole bunch of fall protection stuff that we can do as preliminary without having to travel or go any place, and contest it. You can't really lay bricks or things like that. You're going to have to learn how to dip your trowel and put the exact amount on. But there's so many things that you can do and that you can collaborate on. Like right now, we can grab a flue liner and open it up and look at the cracks in it and look at the amount of creosote and learn what that looks like. We can look at efflorescence or freeze thaw damage, or other water damage and things like that. We can step through the sheetrock in an attic with nothing, no bad thing happens, right?
Right. No,
And that's
I'll tell you, Bob. What I was super interested or impressed with was the creosote buildup on the. You had like 5 stages of it, and even though it was a cartoon, it really that's the one thing that didn't look too much like a cartoon. That really looked like I'm looking up my camera, or even with the flashlight. What that was true to it. The spotting of the barely coated, and then you can see it getting caked down a little bit more and more. That looks like real soot. That
yeah.
to me was cool.
Well, even people said they were surprised how realistic the attic looked. Although it's a very easy attic to walk through. I've challenged those guys going, hey, nobody gets an attic like that to just
Right.
walk in. But, you go in an attic, you drop your flashlight, you drop your tape measure, it damages the sheetrock, and you end up patching the living room and painting the whole thing. And most of us have experienced that at one time or another. The movie Gran Turismo, which I think it came out about 2012, and the scene that it covers was 2009, and that was one of the earliest virtual reality systems where a guy wanted to build the most realistic car racing game that could be invented. And this was not putting on a headset and being immersed in it. It was a screen in front of a thing that you sat on. The guys had to work on their cars and all of this stuff. Well, in it, a guy went to Nissan and said, there's 80,000 people playing this game that are car buffs, and they are a market for us, and we should be reaching them. And we can do it by having a contest. And we're going to take all of these people racing these cars virtually, and whoever wins, send them to a real race car school, see how they do.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that's the whole story of this. It's on Netflix. If somebody wants to watch it, you should watch it, because the kid who won, there's a whole bunch of things about it, and you don't need to know, but they learned how to drive. They would drive these racetracks. These are road racing tracks in Le Mans style cars, and they ended up, a group of them who were video gamers, podiumed at Le Mans. Now, if you crash one of those cars, it's like $1 million or $2 million plus a death possibly, or they had a horrible accident in it that took out a bunch of spectators. Well, that whole scene, even though everybody was against these video kids, that changed car racing when they podiumed. Now everybody does it that way. That's how they learn to drive, because it's so realistic, and you learn all the things, and you have none of the danger or any of the mistakes that you could make that are going to be so costly. The other thing that it gives you is a way to transfer knowledge. Now, I started in the 80s, but in the 70s, late 70s, I was welding wood stoves. And I've watched the development of wood stoves for 50 years. Well, how do you take that knowledge and transfer it down to another generation? It's very difficult by the time they see it in the real world. Well, we can build it in VR, and they can go through in an abbreviated history and see and experience and work with the products and understand the development of them. And that's a really, I think, a big thing, to get that transfer of knowledge from one generation to another.
I'm assuming this is Steve again saying each time you go in and inspect the fireplace, the effects are different every time you go in. So it's not like a video game where it's better than a video game, because a video game you have levels and you're probably doing the same level that just trying to you get stuck in a spot. And it sounds like this, and you can verify this, Bob, that every time you go in it, you may be going into the same house, but it's a different fireplace scenario.
Yeah, so we're randomizing it, and we're working on how we want to have it randomized. But yeah, whenever anybody goes in, we don't want them to get the same thing. The process of an inspection is the same. How you start, how you're going to collect your information, but In one house, it may be freeze thaw cycles. In another, it may be a foundational shift. All the different possibilities. And we start off with small modules showing individual damage or individual evidence. Might be moss growing on the chimney, or, like I said, efflorescence. And then this is water damage. These are thermal cracks. This is a crack from a foundation shift. Here's a leaning chimney. Here's the way the crown is, and it's cracked, or the hearth, or whatever it is. But the next time you go, it's going to be a little bit different. And you might have a mantle that's too close to the fireplace opening, or something else. And all of these things have to be measured and checked so that it is new. And you're having to, the only things you don't have to do every single time, we have that you can't, your first time in, you have to put on booties and throw your drop cloths from the front door, because it's best practice. And if your company doesn't do that, okay, you don't have to do that. But we're still laying out best practice.
Right.
And you'll have to lay out drop cloths, but you're going to be able to skip past some of that to get into the inspection. And of course, it won't all be masonry fireplaces. We're also doing factory builts and freestanding stoves. We'll have a factory built chimney in a chase, as well as a freestanding chimney in a chase. Another masonry one that comes down to a thimble. We'll be doing air pressure in the house. We're at the tech right now. We're showing it in the ham house, but we're going to be able to put a tech in the house and start measuring the differences in air pressure and learning that. So very practical and close to physical. And, we've got headsets now, but how long is it going to be till they're glasses? Not very long.
Well, and then as me and you were talking, I think my hiccup with it was, and I don't think it's just my age. I just think I don't want to bottleneck training, and I don't want to have to bottleneck people taking the VRs home. And then you talked about Plan B. Are you willing to talk about that yet, or is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us about Plan B, which is I'm a Plan B guy on this one. So
okay, so to get the immersion and to actually, when you put the headset on, you aren't in this world anymore. This other one appears, and that's where you are. But not everybody wants a headset or wants to wear one, although I'll talk about this in a minute. But if you don't want to or don't have one, it's also going to be coming out in WebGL, which means you can watch it on your computer screen. And we call it the B team because it's two-dimensional. It's on the screen. But you can still, and you can't manipulate things with your hands. You'll have to use your keyboard and mouse. So it's not quite as realistic, but the process is there.
Right.
But since Apple came out with its headset, it sort of legitimized this whole VR industry. And their belief is every household's going to have several, just like computers now, just like cell phones. There's not that many people who have them today, but 5 more years, yeah.
Well, the augmented reality, I think, is where this is going.
And it is. Yeah, mixed reality, augmented reality.
Yeah, because I've been looking at augmented reality, trying to figure out how to do something with the sales process. Because I'm an average chimney company guy. Because I've been out of the business. Running the business for 10 years now, and been back on the business side of it. Business coaching and stuff like that. So I'm the guy that buys everybody the training. And I'm not even certified anymore, and let it all go. And it's just so. I think when I was looking at the augmented and the 3D and looking at all these different things, the augmented is, if you guys don't know, everyone in the audience, if you don't know what augmented is, you put a piece of glasses on, or you might have contacts even in the future. And you've seen this in movies, some movies, and I can't name a movie that does this, but you put the glasses on and you're in real life. You see everything that you see, but then the glasses are TV screens that are showing, like, if you what the vision for me is this. So we show up to a house, we put the glasses on, or we always have them on, and it starts showing defects when you start looking at the fire. You put it on fireplace mode on your app on your phone, fireplace inspection mode, and then this sounds crazy, but this is where I see this going in the future, where it starts looking at the fireplace and it starts telling you what's wrong, and it's recording it, and it's going to be putting it on there on your app, on your inspection app, and doing it. You'll be able to talk to it through a thing. That's where I think, not in the next year or so, but I mean, you're looking at 10 years maybe or less, as this AI just keeps plowing through technology and getting better and better and better and faster, that our life, not taking the human out of it, but there is a little thing with that coming, I think, too. That's what I wrote in my article. But when you have these glasses that can literally look in a fireplace, and it can identify, or look at a hearth, and well, that hearth isn't the right size for the size of the opening. It's doing all the measurements for you because you programmed it to look at that. You look up into a smoke chamber and you start seeing it. It just can do all that stuff. And one thing that for our industry that I'd like to see is I'd like to see the X-ray and the infrared get a little bit better, to start showing like stuff we can't see. Where you really got to go do a level 3. If you get into a situation, I'd really like to see that kind of technology start coming out and being implemented in our. And I know a lot of guys are using infrared, and we use it, and doing different things. And I mean, I think my guys are now carrying like 3 different devices, moisture readers, and we've got the heat thing, whatever, all that. But I mean, I really want to see X-ray come out, some type of thing to see in the wall better. I mean, so who knows? But the future is insane, crazy with what's happening, and I love our industry for, and thank you, Bob, for bringing this to the market. I love what our industry is doing. I mean, with all these guys that are developing apps and really trying to help out, the industry. Even though it's a little side hustle for most of these guys. I mean, my chimney closer, I made that for me. And then someone suggested, hey, why don't you give that out? So I do. And right now, I mean, all my own clients that I coach, they have it for free. And then I sell it to everybody who's not coaching with me. And I'm supposed to this month start charging for it. But I don't know. It doesn't cost me that much. And so I spent about 4 months developing it. It's pretty cool. It does have AI in it, where you actually role play with the computer. And it's the crazier thing, Bob. The more I put into it and more people play with it, the more it keeps learning.
Yeah.
And I had to call up the company that developed and tell it to dumb it down a little bit, because it was getting too smart assy.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's what generative AI means. It learns and collects data. So we're limiting a lot of the AI we're developing, because we have 2 AI. There's an entertainment one, as they call it, already on the NCSG website, though it's kind of hard to find. I think you have to, I forget where you have to go to events or something, and down at the bottom, you click and it ends up way over on the side. But there's another one that we're putting in on the members only side. That's a technical AI that we've been feeding tons of information on chimneys and code books and everything else that we can fit into it. And you can ask it questions instead of searching and all of that. You can just pop up the AI, say, hey, what is the standard for this? And it's going to tell you, as well as we're loading all of the 700 and some manuals that are in the members library into that AI. So then you can say, hey, I've got a Mark 123 from 1984. What's the specs on it? What's the size of it? Because if you're doing a rip and replace, you need to know that sort of thing. And you can start accessing it more easily. And that's what all of this is. There's a convenience factor and something that just simply makes it easier to do. And I think our AIs are going to be doing more and more of the things. We already know they're renting cars for people. They're planning travel. There'll be a time, I think, I wrote a spoof that didn't get published in Sweeping yet, but um, that your AI calls my AI and says, "Hey, he's on his way. Uh, he'll be there in 45 minutes." And my AI says, "Great, we'll have the door open and I'll be monitoring you as you come in." And you never meet the customer. Then their AI pays your AI, which sends it to the office, and that's the exchange because they don't have to talk to you. And what that's going to do for marketing is anybody's question. You know, that's a whole nother realm. We don't know where this is going to go. When they say, a lot of us think, well, AI is just kind of a supercharged search engine, but
No,
it's not.
it's not. No.
And when you hear the geeky people out there going, this is transformative as the internet was when it began, start paying attention because we don't really know where it's going to end up. A lot of things start to become possible.
Yeah.
Some are like, are you kidding me? No. But a lot is really interesting things. And whether we like it or not, we're progressing into it. And we have these younger generations coming in that are already used to it. They're used to talking to AI, they're used to interacting in virtual worlds. So it's their generation are going to inherit the earth. It's not going to be us.
Right. So before I forget, so if people can see it, I can't even find it on NCSG. Where does someone want if wants to get the VR program? Where do they go?
The best thing would be to contact me through, and I'll just put you in contact. We're not selling the headsets. You have to have a headset in order to do it. You don't, well, until we put it on the web GL, you need a headset. So, and we're selling headsets with the app already on it, as well as a case and some other stuff. Um, and we just rolled out the application. There's already a beta starting. Um, so right now, all somebody would be able to get is the demo, and then begin to get it as we roll out each module. We're hoping to have this open fireplace pretty much finished. It's always going to be a work in progress, but by April 15th, and then we'll start on the next ones, which will all go much faster because we had to build the world. You know, you're building the
Right.
house, you're
Right.
building the world, you're putting in the chimney, you're doing all this stuff, and then you're coming back with damage. But the second masonry chimney that we do with to a thimble, we really only have to concentrate on the thimble and the various types of thimbles and a wood stove. We put in an insert. Well, it's going to have the same guts as a wood stove. So it's not a lot of new artwork. We can drop a liner down to it. Um, same when we get to factory built. It's a lot less complex than a masonry, a site built masonry is. So, and there's a lot that'll come much faster as we get into those.
Do you want me to put your cell phone, or do you have a different number to put on here for them to
Just
contact
put
you?
education at ncsg.org. Just
I got.
email me.
Okay.
Yeah. And
To
then I'll put you in contact. We're not selling the headsets ourselves because when people call and say, it's not working, we don't want to deal with it. Because,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. I have to put mine on and see what it does.
All the
And
guys. Yeah.
I don't want to explain it to you. Go on YouTube like I did and figure it out. But that sort of
But
thing, that's another thing is that they're fairly durable. The Apple one, if you drop it, it's $2,000. You're going to pay to fix it. It's pretty
education
fragile.
at ncsg.org. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Got it.
Education at ncsg.org.
I'm just gonna put it on there. So, um, yeah, you don't want to drop a $2,000, and that which goes to another point of uh, making sure that the right people are using it at the right time and not abusing it. And so,
Well,
um,
yeah. I mean, the Meta, which is what we're writing for, Apple so far isn't allowing developers in. They're pretty private. But their thing is collaboration. When you read about the Apple and what they're really looking for, is getting groups of people in a virtual environment who then are collaborating on projects and building things and manipulating things and doing things.
So
That says
it's an
something
open
about what they expect the future to be.
So like an open AI, but more like how when the internet first started, it was people just plugging into it as an open source, and then it became what it was. That's how the internet started.
Yeah.
After I left the military, it was just guys. And I remember the early '90s. I went over to this kid's house, and he was a total guy. He's probably a billionaire now. I mean, and he was into all that stuff, and he was on the internet, and it was like just like you'd see in the movie War Games back in 1982. But all the programming, I mean, he's typing like that, and watch this, and there'd be some really bad graphic guy, doing all that. He thought it was the coolest thing ever, and then all of a sudden he kind of did a War Games thing when I was there, and he goes, "Hey, watch this." And he puts his phone on, and he logs in. He goes, "This is a bank." And I went, "What?" I said, "I don't even want to be here." He goes, don't worry about it." And he gave me some line of story, and I said, "Get out of that because I don't want to be nothing to do with that." That was like in 1992 or 93. And so anyway, but yeah, I mean it's funny you were talking about your AI to AI. Wait till you read my article. It's very similar to that.
Well, we're flying drones and taking measurements with them. There's lots of technology that we're used to using. We've gotten used to people walking around talking to people who aren't there. And now we're going to be getting used to people seeing people and things that aren't there. Self-driving cars are not complete yet, but when you start talking about augmented reality, that's really what's happening with that. You're looking through a glass. Some of it's computer, some of it's not. It's measuring distances and speeds and all of that sort of thing. It's for us old guys, we're like, I mean, I'm not going to trust myself to something like that. But on the other hand, uh, I can remember in the when I was born. I was born in 1951, and TV just came out. I was in the first generation that basically grew up with a TV. The one before that were the first ones that grow up with a radio and a car. So we're all it's that's just the way that things develop and come. So it's new. It's going to improve. It's going to get better and better and faster, and we're going to be able to learn differently. They've already started to have some findings that said that the kids of the Zers, who are the ones that have grown up with a computer all the time, and there's already different neuron paths that they're growing from those of us that grew up as readers. So there really is a physiological difference in the way that they interact with the world. I'm not saying it's bad or good, it's just different.
Right.
And if the better we can understand that, the more we're going to be able to communicate cross generationally and understand what's going on. And personally, of course, I'm open to it.
My younger kids, that are early college down to sixth grade right now, they all in their formative years had iPhones. Now my two older daughters, who are in their mid to late 20s, iPhone was too expensive to give them an iPhone, right? And so
Right.
they may have had a tablet or maybe an iPad, but they didn't really grow up with it and then they're all addicted to them now, right? But here's the crazy thing. My 1.5-year-old granddaughter can take my phone. She can barely say 15 words, and she can take my phone and open it and start doing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and she's 1.5. I mean, and that is, I mean, my youngest daughter, Millie, she was the same way. I mean, she would be grabbing our phones and learn how to unlock them and do stuff before she was walking and talking. It's like, how in the hell did you even? And that's just by watching, right? I never gave her a phone and said, "This is how you do it." She just
Yeah.
watched us do it, and then started doing it. And the next thing you know, she's 4 years old, and I'm going, "Hey, how do I do this on here?"
Yeah.
She's four.
It's just how it is. Like I studied Greek for a while and it was really complicated to me. And the way I'd get through it is go, little babies learn this stupid language. There shouldn't be any reason I can't. And it's the same thing. People go, well, I don't know how to get into that thing. You put on a headset, you've got a learning curve that's going to be there. My grandkids just stick them on and start figuring it all out intuitively, just like your granddaughter. It's just it, it's how it is, and that is who we're making this for. That's really the ones who are in their 20s who are coming into the workforce. We need to speak their language. We want to communicate in a way they understand and teach them in a way that they learn, not the way that we learn, the way they learn. And that's more complicated than I'm making it because people learn in different ways. But this technology thread is moving through education and learning, and there's a biological component to it, whether we like it or not. It is changing the way people's brains connect into those things.
Right.
So we can either fight against it and we'll be the Luddites of our generation, or we can start looking at it and figuring out, well, what's the best way to use this? Because it's a tool. It's just a tool. It's another way to do something.
The older I get and I hear other people talk, and you as well, and we talk about the younger generation, you hear people always constantly, that are talking about every generation talk bad about the younger generation. And I mean, they really do. They always do. And when you start, and then as I get older into my 50s now, and seeing, the people that we're hiring and different things, and I've had to I just talked to my management within this last month and said, listen, and I had to kind of give them all just a refresher course. And just because in talking with them, I started hearing the old fogey talk about them, who they're hiring. And I'm like, whoa, guys, you're not going to change them. You are going to need to alter to a little bit to them. And then you should have seen their faces. They were like, what? So yeah, you're going to need to start understanding them more than you're going to bring them to understand you. They know you. They've got grandparents. They've got all that. But you guys have to start working with them, because you're dealing with a lot of people around 30 years old or a little younger that you can't just like go off and swear and cuss at them and be upset with them and walk away and expect them to be okay. No, but and then the way you talk, the way you train them is not like it used to be, and so you have to start adapting and using things to get them to really start, understanding stuff. Speed. So part of my whole entire Coach's Corner article coming out next month is really about what technology does. It's speed.
Yeah.
Everything is being sped up. People are learning faster, and you would think they're not learning as good. I think the right people are learning better, faster than we ever did.
Well, and there's, you might say at first there's certain data-driven things that you can certainly learn faster. There's certain procedural things that you can learn faster. Then we might say, well, they're emotionally behind. But that's changing also. I mean, From the Future, who we're working with, are actually, it's called, I think if you go to brightpath.com, they're working on things for autistic children in VR. Because within that, they can interact with an AI persona and begin to get used to human-like interactions. It begins to bridge them into real human interactions. And of course, you got physiological things where people have had a amputation or something like that, and they've done an implant, and suddenly nerves start connecting and working. That's going to be bridged. It's not like you have some sort of held back generation that are never going to be completely there emotionally or relationally. That's just not true. Right. And I mean, I grew up in the 60s, so you can imagine what my forebears said about us. Those long-haired hippies, their hanging's too good for them,
Yeah.
you know, and we like to kind of brag as boomers, man, our generation works and I know how to work and this younger guys don't. Well, that's bullshit. There's all kinds of young people who work hard and do great stuff, and there's all kinds of boomers who are idiots and lazy as all get out, and that's every generation.
Right.
So we have to be careful about what we say because we're going to attract that to ourselves. We're having trouble. Maybe the problem is here, not there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was trying to tell my management. So, to just to off topic here, Philip, he's a firefighter. I believe it's around Chicago area. I've been a chimney sweep now for 4 or 5 years. And Chad, you going on a sailing race with Mark and then with Brewer and all them guys. I am actually on the list to do that if they have someone fall out. I put myself on the list. Talking to Brewer a few weeks back, and I am not going, which I wouldn't have been able to go this right now anyway. But then Philip says the retention factor is key with the VR, and it very well could be. I mean, I think with the VR more than anything, you are able to, like with my app with language, I can literally, if a guy sits down with my app on Monday, by the following Monday, he can talk as good as anyone else on about a fireplace and chimney parts and how to sell it. If he really spent 8 hours a day in my app and your app or the VR thing, I know you're going to be adding that to it too eventually if it's not already. But you can identify without ever having to climb a ladder, without having to do everything, and you can start seeing stuff that in training a lot of times you can't see until you see it.
Yeah, that's right. And how many of your guys complain that, I'd hire a new guy or several new guys, and they have to go out and work with the guys who are in the truck. And those guys they're just going to slow me down. And I had a whole training I built a training center in my shop. I had roofs to climb on, chimneys to clean and build. I had a training center. That's what my coaches taught me to do. And so I could get a guy up to speed to where he wasn't as much of a hindrance. But the guys didn't like it. A lot of them, they slow me down, and it's a different rhythm. So the more that I can pour into them when they come off of a truck, well, one, they might know where to park the truck because that's coming in our VR. I said, let's skip it for the beginning. We need to get in to the meat. But where do you park? How do you greet the customer? Do you take your sunglasses off so they can see your eyes? Well, that's a basic relational sales thing.
Right.
Just a real simple thing. We did that in our shop. How do you knock on the door? Take your step back in order to give the personal space that our culture likes. Simple sales things. Then we've got our training that's going into AI, where we're going to be working on body language, mirroring, being able to explain to different personalities that we create. All of those things are coming in AI for sales as well. So it's a complete program.
I got a question for you. How long do you think, because it's so new, you're 5 months in, and so how long do you think it's where it's actual imagery instead of the cartoons?
It's less of a cartoon than you might think.
No, I know it is, but I mean, I'm just saying it's still digital. I say cartoon, wrong words, guys. It's digital, and it is fairly realistic digitally. I get that, but when do you think that it would be an actual, like a video of stuff and that?
Yeah, I don't know, but I think that's what we're aiming towards until I mean, really, in a sense, that's what mixed reality starts to become, where the two realities merge.
Yeah.
And you're working in both at the same time, bouncing back and forth more or less seamlessly. I think that's what you mean.
Yeah.
The bricks are the real bricks, and this is the real chimney, and they're coming together. So it's not that far away. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know anything about computers. And I tell people, look, when I say we're making this up as they go, how much is this? What does this take? I don't know. I'm making it up as I go along. It's
Yeah.
new territory for us. We haven't gone through it before, and it could be done better. And there's people who know more, but we've opened the door. The
Right.
door is now open. For once, our trade is 20 years ahead rather than 20 years behind, and it's really exciting to see it develop. The young guys, in their 20s and 30s who were at convention, it's the first time I've ever had them come up and go, we really feel like this is ours now, and we're ready to take it and go. And that was really good because that's a hard thing for one generation to let go and let the new ones come in, as we're seeing all the things that they don't know, but we're not seeing all the things that we're blind to ourselves.
Right.
And to let that go and let that generation make its mistakes, but also step in to the new and expand and build on, that's an exciting thing to be part of.
The next generation, because I mean, you see a lot of up and coming companies coming up, and you're seeing, a lot of these guys are moving pretty fast and doing really well. And when I talk to a lot of these companies that are starting to have 10, 15, 20 trucks, I mean, they're not hitting roadblocks, but they're hitting roadblocks. Like, how do I? Yeah, just like we all do. It's like, okay, how do I mean? I literally texted one of the fastest moving guys in the industry a couple days ago. It's like, listen, you're doing great. You're going fast. It's amazing, but stay focused on some of the bottom end stuff and make sure that this and this. And he's like, thank you, no, because nobody's telling him all that stuff, right? Everyone's like trying to ride the coattails, and nobody's talking reality to him. I'm like, hey man, be prepared for a slow time. It's
Well, that's when it becomes real. Anybody can make it when times are good,
yeah,
but when all of a sudden things slow down or the market shifts, that's when you find out, are your systems working? Do you actually embrace your systems? Do you really know what your costs are? How are you going to make these adjustments? And it can become excruciatingly painful to go through that as you're losing business. I mean, I went through the California drought in 20 started in 2012, right at the end of the year, and it lasted 3 years. And every day from before Christmas on, it was over 70 degrees, and we had no snow. That's when the whole fix your leaky chimney was going on, and it was raining in the east. And I'm working with different marketers who's going, let's do we fix leaky chimneys. I go, if you roll that out, I'll never pay you. There's no water here.
right.
You can't believe how dry. So I lost 800 forward scheduled jobs. I lost 40% of my business the first year. I lost
Wow.
another 25% the next year. And in the middle of it, I opened a store. So, because I'm like, I either got to go all in and make something happen or lose it all, because it was, what do you do with that? How do you take weather out of the equation? And there's other ways. You have to find your way through this maze, and moving fast is not that hard. You can market if you have the right market. The 10 counties north of Sacramento that I live in Northern California, there's under 600,000 people in all 10 counties that are those 10 counties. Just some of them, our county's bigger than Rhode Island. I mean, there's bigger than a lot of the states.
Yeah.
And so you have this different kind of a market. If you're in a different kind of an urban area, or something that's more populous, or something where you can centralize, there's different rhythms to the business, different ways that you approach it. And learning all of those is why you hire a coach. I hired a coach because I've been a mountain guide. And if you go into the wilderness with me, you should do what I say, because I've already been there.
Yep.
And I hired coaches based on that principle. Like, I need somebody who's already been there, been successful, who's gone through all these different stages, gone too fast too soon, gone too slow too soon, and knows the trail. And I'm just going to follow them and do what they say.
It's funny. Just today, coaching a couple clients I had today, and then there's coaching, consulting, and mentorship, right? And I'm kind of all three, and you start talking to people about their marketing, and like we're slowing down right now, and I asked them, I said, well, okay, you're slowing down right now with leads. So what are you doing for your marketing right now? And they're like, nothing. And I'm like, okay. So let's think about what nothing means. What did you do last year at this time? Nothing. How was last year's second quarter? It was terrible. Okay. So why don't we up our marketing right now? I know that's pretty easy sounding, but I've coached some companies that have been around for more than 10 years and they've never opened up their marketing in the second quarter. And I'm like, spend more money in marketing, at least to get yourself guys busy and stuff. And in the last month, I've had 3 companies, all of them over 5-6 years old, who have never thought about it. And what they do a lot of times is they hire a marketing company, and the marketing company does the initial work. And what do? They put their marketing on autopilot.
Right.
So like they're not adjusting for like, okay, are we busy? Are we slow or busy? Or calling up and going, hey, how's the lead flow? How are you doing? Do we need to up social media? Do we need to up AdWords? Do we need to calm it down a little? What do you want to do? They never do this. And so it's like you need to be proactive with all this stuff to make sure that that's happening. So anyway,
you've got enough software now that gives you all the feedback that's going to tell you what your marketing drivers are, how much each new customer is costing you within each of the marketing mediums. And you got to look and do what works best and stop doing what doesn't work, even though you like it.
Right.
You just don't do it. If not bringing it in, or you get the average invoice that you're tracking, and the key word is tracking, if it's not up there, then stop doing that one and do a different one. And one of the big things we had was, you have a list of customers, and those are people that have already used you. And in the spring, that's who you go back to. And those are the people who are going to be thinking about it and knowing that they're going to have a reason to call you, and they trust you already. And I mean, we had, 22,000 addresses in our database. Well, that's a heck of a lot of market share that we could market in the slower times, because they aren't all calling us every year, and they have needs. So that's one of our gold mines, is to go to them, and they're cheap. The cost of reaching an existing customer is so much less.
So not popular or popular, doesn't matter. I'm just telling everybody a tool that I've used, and it's on the same lines what you're talking about now. But there are customers that you've gone out to that are just not going to buy what you gave them because it's too expensive. It just is, and then that's okay. Their chimneys in disarray. It's pretty pricey. And what I started doing, and I think it was 2016. We were having a really rough spring, which we always are. But it kind of carried over to summer, which normally summer starts picking up. And so I sent out, and this is going to sound completely nuts to people, but you got to listen to hear me out. We sent out a discount email to at that time, I think we had like 18,000 emails, and we sent out this email. We did a nice one off of one of the things where you do the platform, a nice little email we put together, and it said up to 40% off, labor only. And we generated that. We sent it off in late June, right before 4th of July. And we generated almost $300,000 in the next 3 months of work. And we would look at jobs that we did, like bid $10,000. It was summertime, so we just wanted the work. So we would say, well, the labor of that job, is $6,500. So we will knock that down to $3,500 or $4,200 and give them off a couple grand. And people were buying. So I carried that over to my coaching. When people are in trouble, This is not a yearly thing. This is your whole shit time to send out an email to get things rolling again. And I've had 3 companies, the same companies I was just telling you about the marketing thing. I told them to do that. Every one of them is cash flowing like crazy right now. Now it's not a system to do to where every April I'm going to send this out. Don't do that. But
no, people get used to it and go, I'll just wait till they do that.
It's the old shit. It's the old shit email is what we call it. And so, and you do that, but because if you are marketing correctly to everybody and you are doing your call schedule forward stuff and re-inspecting, you should never have a flow of no cash flow coming in, if you've done it correctly.
Right. And if you're doing it incorrectly, you don't know what you give too big of a discount, you're going to be going out and find out at the end of the year that you did all this work for free.
Right.
And maybe even owing money at the end of the year.
Well, you don't want to the discount thing is the last resort. Cash flow sucks, and how am I making payroll? That's when you roll that out. So, Bob, we're about out of time here, or we are out of time. So I have one question for you. You're retired. You're still in the industry doing stuff. I mean, maybe not out in the field like you say. What is, and I'm putting you on the spot here, what is the one thing you would tell people who are running a business that you think today is more relevant than anything of a piece of advice to give them?
The best thing you can be is who you are. You need to be authentic, not try to imitate somebody else, not pretend, really be real and honest, first with yourself, and then with your family, and then with your employees and your customers. And it goes like that. If you're not honest with yourself about how you really feel, who you really are, what you really want, you're going to always struggle.
Great advice. And that's where we're going to end it tonight. So the wisdom of Bob Ferrari. So Bob, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Good
guys. Chat with Chad is a great one tonight, and I hope if you're watching the replay, great. If not, everybody, good night. And so, in the stream.